I kind of want to take like I've watched a lot of your interviews prepping for this, and a lot of them, talk about specific books, but I kind of want to like dig a little deeper, if we can, because I kind of want to understand how you got here. And
Yeah,
um, okay,
whatever
cool.
you want to do.
So,
Yeah.
but before that, I want to know, was there a book or a story you read that completely changed your mind, where you said, I want to do this full time?
Since I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a professional. I wanted to be like a novelist. I wanted to write books. So I don't know where it came from. I don't know what put that bug in
Hmm.
me. Um, I do sometimes tell the story about, when I was in third grade and I wrote a story and the teacher loved it and the class loved it. And I kind of I think that was sort of when I caught the itch to be like, the fever to be a writer. But I'd always read. I was a big reader when I was a little kid. So yeah, I don't know. But no, there wasn't like a hallelujah moment in that regard, where I was like, I want to be that guy. I mean, other than maybe reading Stephen King, but like I said, even before that, I always wanted to be a writer. I never wanted to be anything else. So I don't know. It's just something I was oddly born with, I guess.
Hmm. Were your parents into the arts when you were younger, or?
No,
Oh, no,
no,
no.
no. My dad's a politician, and my mom is, a homemaker and uh, own an antique shop for a while. So no, none of my family are especially creative. I have, I'm the youngest of six kids. Um, Not that they're not creative people, or but what I'm saying. They don't do it. They don't do it for like they're all lawyers and you know stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. My family, sometimes thinks I'm adopted, or they found me on in an alley. I don't know,
Right.
but no, I don't know where it came from.
So did you have formal training in writing? Like, did you go to school for it? Um,
No,
no. So
no.
it's self-taught.
I went to I went to a year of college
Mhm.
and then dropped out. And that was it. So, and I was just not learning anything there. Uh, and even then, I was just taking like I went to a year, and then I did like another semester where I just literally went to this school in Chicago, and I just took their creative writing classes. I didn't take anything else. I took like three creative writing classes, and I just hated them all with a passion. Um, and I just got nothing out of them. And I didn't like the people. I didn't like the way they talked about writing. I don't know. It didn't connect with me at all. So I just dropped out, and that was it. And everything else I've done on my own.
Hmm. Okay. So one of the interviews I was listening to, you were a manager for a band also in your early years. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, I was me and my high school buddies. They were in a band, and the managers kind of in quotes. I kind of traveled around with them, and I helped them book events, and I helped collect the money at the end of the night, and that kind of moved gear in and out. I was more like a glorified roadie, but yeah. So just because I was like, I had nothing else going on, and I thought it'd be fun, and we all moved to Chicago together. We lived together for a long time, for a couple of years, or about a year actually, and then I left Chicago and came to LA. Yeah, I did work in the music industry for about 7 years. I worked for House of Blues Entertainment. Um, so yeah, I worked in film and TV, and then I worked for House of Blues as a music executive. And then I owned a bookstore for about 7 years, and then I worked in film and TV again for about 5, 6 years, and then now I'm writing full time.
Cool. So, you said, when you were writing screenplays, because I know you used to write screenplays, you said you don't really enjoy that process of writing screenplays.
No, because it's not really. It's a different. It's just a different thing. It's not really. It's very technical. Um, there are a lot of people involved. both with the writing process and ultimately the production process. Um, so you're doing it. It's not. I mean, I want to say it's not creative, but it's not. It's not art. For it to be to sound like a posh
Mhm.
uh artist about it. It's not really art. It's very like I said, it's very technical. It's very structured. You have to worry about budgets and locations and actors and special effects and practical effects and blah 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 blah. So it's really more of it's really more of a skill in the sense that it's like more of a trade skill, I guess, versus like writing fiction, which is art, which is me, alone in a vacuum, creating something from scratch, uh, and outside of editorial comments or proofreader comments or whatever, it's my art. I'm very passionate about it. So it's just different, if that makes sense. It's kind of like being a musician and being in a whatever, and having like your own music that you write and perform and record, and then you know being paid to write jingles. It's
Mhm.
kind of it's sort of that like that. It's one's very workmanlike and one's very much more artistic.
So as an example, like I read that you worked on a Disney movie, right? The Santa Paws 2,
Hmm.
right? So when you write a screenplay like that and you present it to a company like a huge company like Disney, when you hand that over, do you almost lose creative control at that point of what happens with it, or do they?
Yes,
You do, yeah.
yes. If you ever had it in the first place. So yeah, the Disney movie, for example, was a work for hire. So which means that they paid me to write their movie. So it wasn't like, but a lot of the ideas obviously are mine because I wrote, but they give me like, like a paragraph or a page saying, this is basically the story. These are the characters who are involved, and now go make it into a screenplay. So, so again, it's fun like that. Those Disney movies were fun because they were silly and they were kids movies, and you could tell fart jokes and stuff like that. Um, so it was a little more relaxed, but yeah. So, but like say my movie, uh, Girl Missing for Lifetime Television, I wrote that movie, and then I had then they attached the director, and then then I sold the script. The producer sold the script, and then they attached the director, and then the director had notes, and then the studio had notes, and then we got into production, and then there were more notes because their budget wasn't enough to do X, Y, and Z, and then they hired actors who were not the same characters that I had written originally, so I had to rewrite for those actors to work into the story, and I was rewriting every single day. I think I did something like 26 drafts of that screenplay before we even I don't want to say before we went into production. I think throughout the process. So yeah, so I have a folder where it has every draft, and I think there's like 26 or 27 of them. So again, it's just very so at that point, once you sell the script, nobody cares what you think. They just tell you what to do. So and you just do it. So and I just went through a process. So I would I still write a screenplay? Yeah, if I was paid to do it, I would, because I'm a gun for hire in that regard. But would I write a spec script and try and shop it and sell it to somebody? Hell no, never. Nightmare fuel. No, because no, no,
No.
no. I mean, there are people who write screenplays on spec, basically, and then they go out and they try and sell it, or maybe they have an agent, or maybe they did whatever, and that's fine. Like they love doing it, and there are people that really love writing screenplays. They love the technicality of it. They love the storytelling of it. They love that it's going to be adapted to film. They love so they just for whatever they're film school guys. They're film people, but they're not writers. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
I get it. Yeah. Mhm.
They're more about the movie than they are about the written word. Put it that like, which is fine, but it's a different art form.
Okay, so your fiction then, what year were you first published?
Well, I self-published a novel in 1999 uh, called The Egotist, and then I didn't publish anything after that until Mother. I sold Mother, which was my first horror story. Um, I sold that in 2015.
So if you can talk about that. So like with Mother, when a company says, we'll publish you, when you present it to them, are they looking for something specific that you know of, that you're like, here, wait, I have this that will attract you to publish my story?
No, I think you submit to publishers who you think would want your story based on their other publications. Um, but that's kind of the extent of it. Just like I wouldn't pitch a if I write a science fiction story, I would pitch it to science fiction magazines and anthologies. Horror, type of horror it is. There's certain publishers that are geared more toward certain kinds of horror or certain genres. So you just kind of pick who you submit to based on what else they've published and if you think it's a good fit. But that's about the extent of it.
Okay, so like you just announced that you were signed by one of the big five for Boys in the Valley, and so that was released a few years ago, right, on Earthling.
Mhm.
Um, I don't have that edition, but so like, did you publish it with Earthling and then say, this can go further? I want to shop this again because I think this can go to a bigger publisher.
Well, most I think I shouldn't say I mean, from my experience, when you publish a limited edition novel, especially, you always have the intention of taking it out wider. Um, Nobody wants to write a novel and have 500 people read it. So um, the intention is to sell it to a limited edition press, and then in this scenario, um, and then hopefully ultimately sell it to a trade press. So whether it be whoever, someone who does, paperbacks and hardcovers, trade hardcovers and paperbacks. So and ebooks and audiobooks and all that stuff. So no, the idea is to do. I mean, although there are some authors, some big authors who they have certain books that they don't really feel have a broad audience, and so they do the limited, and that's kind of what they do. I mean, Josh Mallerman, published Ghoul in the Cape. I think they did 1,000 copies. I don't know if he has any intention of doing another edition of that book. So, I guess it's case by case, but I think for the most part, you're selling it to a limited deluxe press. If you sell it to them first, traditionally, you sell the deluxe edition after you've sold the trade edition. Earthling is one of those rare deluxe presses where they want the first run of the book. Um, so it's a little bit of a different model, which I think it makes it more difficult for him to acquire a lot of stuff because there are a lot of publishers who don't want a book that's already been released as a limited edition. Um, so they want to have control over the press and the reviews and the first. So like Titan, for example, is one I can think of, who wouldn't buy a book if it was already released. Nightfire didn't seem to care. Orbit, I don't think cares because it's
Oh,
only 500 copies. It's more about controlling the press and the reviews and that kind of thing. It's not so much about sales because 500 copies isn't a lot of books to sell. So they're more worried about just kind of controlling the narrative, I think, around the book's release.
mhm. Okay, so like with Boys in the Valley, like with an orphanage, like did you study like the systems of orphanages, or how did you come up with the way to format that in your story?
Oh, you froze there. So
Okay.
I got, but you're asking about research for the orphanages and stuff like that.
Yeah, like the administration levels and all of that. Like how do you research? Do you travel for research? Do you study
I
online?
wish.
Yeah.
No, I read and I Google. I have like I don't know what my stack is, but I think I moved it all up there. But like, for example, this is just part this is literally just like part of what I read for the current book I'm working on. So like every book I research, I read like usually depending on how the book, um, I read a lot on that subject. I take a lot of notes. And then while I'm the Googling comes in handy early on, but I that's more of a resource I utilize while I'm actually writing. So most of the research I do um, pre-writing the book is stuff I read about it, and it varies. So Boys in the Valley was a period piece, but it was also a very isolated period piece because it all takes place in this orphanage, which is sort of timeless in a way. Um, there's not a lot, you're not worried about what kind of cars there are or what kind of stores there are. It's just to worry about what the orphanage is like and what the kids are like, um, how they talk, what they're wearing, that kind of stuff. What how they go to the bathroom, how they wash their hands, you know. Um, so a little bit of that took boys took I would say a moderate amount of research. The book I'm writing now um, is absolutely ki- killing me. It's just a real. It's like every other page is a book report. It's just because I'm dealing with so much. It's Civil War era. It deals with the Civil War. There's interaction throughout with what's happening in that region with the war, and then there's this whole mythology side of things that was extensive research. There's elements of like ancient artifacts. Um, there's religious elements. There's um, witchcraft elements that have to be sort of realistically portrayed. So this book has been an absolute research hog, and I hope I never write a historical novel ever again. But so it kind of depends on the book. I did a book that I haven't announced yet, but I have sold. Hopefully, I'll be announcing it next week or two. They're working on the contract right now. Um, that is a time travel novel, and it is very much hard science. It's not like you know, it's not just like I'm just making it up. It's very much based in science, and so that was a really hard book to research. I read a lot of science books. I read a lot on time travel theory. So that was another example but I really enjoyed writing about or reading about all that stuff. And then so my next book, I'm also going to be researching other stuff, but nothing quite as extensive as what I'm doing with this one, where I think I must have read 30 books um, to gear up for it. And I'm still, and almost every writing session, at the end of the day, I usually have like 30 or 40, tabs open on my browser because I've been looking up. And the thing is, you don't really know how much research goes into something until you're actually writing it. And that's what I kind of meant when I say Google's my friend when I'm actually writing, because you come across stuff that you don't plan on needing to know. So, for example, if you're a Confederate soldier and you get shot and somebody rips open your shirt to like see the wound, what kind of underwear are you wearing? What kind of were there buttons? I don't know, whatever. And little things like that where you really want to make sure everything's right. Um, so you find yourself going like, did they even have scissors in 1862? I don't know. Or were they called scissors? Were they called shears? Did they have, how did they cool their milk? How did they make bread? Whatever it is. So stuff like that is like because that's the problem with not writing something set in present day, is that every single thing these characters do, you have to basically know how they were done, you know, whatever, 200 years ago. So you have to have that research constantly going. So it can be frustratingly slow, because you can't just like write. You can't just like write the story. You have to keep sort of stopping and stopping and stopping. And so it's taken me a long time to write this book, but hopefully I get most of it right. And I'm sure I won't get all of it right, as people on Goodreads will let me know, giddily so. But at least I'll know I've tried my best, you know.
There's always going to be one guy that'll call you out on something, and it'll be random too. Like it'll be something you weren't, thinking about.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I'll say about that. But yes, they love to call you out.
So when you're reading all those books and Googling, like you say, do you find that the writing process it must be enriching because you're learning new things constantly, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
that's the fun part of it. Yeah.
but it must be exhausting too, right? Because you're are you consciously concerned all the time when you're writing a historical piece like that, I hope this is right, like, is it exhausting mentally?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm already writing. I mean, writing a novel alone is exhausting, mentally. So, and this is the first time I've ever written a novel under a deadline, because I sold this book, when I sold Boys in the Valley. I sold the second book as part of that deal. So this is that book. Um, so I don't have like the leisure to just kind of like write as much as I want every day. I have to write a certain amount. So I'm writing between 2,000 and 3,000 words every day, um, without fail, for the going on the last like 2 to 3 months. So that's already mentally straining. But then yes, to be also trying to make sure that all the facts are correct, um, and worrying about not getting those right. And it's not just the facts; it's everything. When you write a book, you don't want, people get upset a lot about this or that or the other thing, and so you're always kind of stress. I think being a writer right today is very stressful, because people come, like, there's a lot more uh, public feedback, and people get upset about a lot of things. They get upset about, everything. So you try to upset people as little as you can. So it's also part of the stress of writing anything these days. Is you're just kind of walking on eggshells all the time, especially when you're writing horror. Um, so yeah, it's all, and I enjoy writing. Obviously, it's all I wanted to ever do. But so I don't want to make it sound like it's, a nightmare or anything. But it is exhausting and stressful when you are trying to do it in a certain amount of time. And I think I bit off a lot more than I could chew in this particular scenario. And I'm also, I had to I was working on being paid to write a screenplay, and that was taking longer than I anticipated. And I had like 2 or 3 short story commitments. So I had to kind of keep stopping the novel and writing like a short story and going back to the novel. So it's just been kind of like a very packed, schedule for me this last couple of months, few months, 12 months, year and a half. Um, so I'm hoping that, like, once I get this book done, um, I'm going to take a little time off. I'm going to go on tour for Boys in the Valley, um, and try to just sort of like slow things down for a little bit, and then kind of like start a new project maybe in the late fall, early winter, is sort of my plan. But yeah, it can be, it's definitely tiring. Um, but I'm happy to be doing it. I do enjoy it very much. I have fun, writing um, the story and the characters and all that kind of stuff. But you also want it to be, you also want it to be great. You want somebody's already, paying me for this book. The cover artwork's being made. I've seen it. Um, so there's pressure. You know what I mean? You want it to be great. Um, You don't want to upset people. You want to get the facts right. You want the story to be fun. So there's a lot that you're worrying about, yeah, when you're writing.
So are you a big outliner when you're preparing a book? I asked this because when I was in school, I had a dual bachelor's. I did literature and writing, and then I did music, and then ultimately I chose music. But I loved the creative writing courses because of the outline aspect of it. Because
Mm.
I felt that the outlining part is actually when you're the most creative, because you're able to just throw a ton of ideas out, um, and then almost step back from it and go, okay, what works, and then pulling different pieces and fitting it together. So I'm curious, if you're on a deadline like the second book you're writing and you're outlining, um, is the outline more geared towards, like you said, you have to do 2,000 words a day? Like, is it more of a technical outline, like this has to be done, knowing you have a deadline, or is it just as creative if you don't have a deadline?
Um, so okay, so to answer your question, I'm a huge outliner. Um, I for all my novels, I outline extensively, extensively, extensively. And that process usually takes um about a month, maybe 3 to 4, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Um, so it's not like a quick and dirty thing. It's something that I really work hard on. Um, I usually outline every single chapter for a novel. And I use Scrivener, the program Scrivener, to do that outlining. And then within each chapter, and I outline all the chapters. I outline, I lay out the characters, who they are, what they look like, that kind of stuff. And then I'll just kind of keep thinking about it and think about it, and I'll kind of tweak it and add to it. And I'll make notes for each chapter of things I want to make sure I hit when I'm actually doing the actual writing um, part. And so, yeah, that's all done in advance. And it varies as to how complicated it is. For this novel I'm writing right now, the outline was actually much easier, ironically, than most of the books I've written, whereas the actual writing has been more difficult, um, because the structure of the story is fairly simplistic. It's one POV. It's like I said, the structure of the actual plot points or beats, if you will, is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of I'm not worrying about seeding things early on that are happening later, or trying to misdirect readers so they don't know who who did what. And then there's outlines and there's not that many characters, which is the other big thing, and there's not that many settings, which is the other big thing. So there's not a lot of moving pieces. Um, Whereas like in Child Alone with Strangers, um, that was a very intense outline because it's such a long book, um, and so it's so much story. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of motivations for different characters. Um, there's a lot going on in that story, uh, and so that was extensive. And then I think I mentioned, actually, there's a book I wrote that hasn't been sold yet, um, called The Blue Butterfly, and it's like a mystery thriller, and that was um, a really really fun and interesting outline process, but it was incredibly intensive because it is a mystery thriller. So I'm structuring basically how to tell the story in a way so that readers are constantly being either misdirected or kept in the dark about certain things, but and dropping clues, here and there. So that was much more of a complex, House of Cards sort of outline. Um, but so it all different outlines for different stories. But so yeah, so this one was very straightforward on the outlining front. I'm not really using it as much as I have other outlines in the past. I'm just kind of like going. But yeah, and then also when you are at the point of your writing career, call it, where you are maybe just pitching a book versus pitching the written, really pitching the idea for a book versus the book, it's, presenting the book itself for consideration. Um, the publisher wants to know, well, what's the story, A to Z, I mean, so you're outlining it anyway, in a way, maybe not extensively chapter by chapter, but you're doing a broad outline so that you can present it to the publisher, as this is my idea for the book. So it's a good idea to be able to, it's a good practice. It's a good thing to know how to do, because you will end up utilizing it down the road, even if you don't write that way, quote unquote. At some point, you might have to come up with it ahead of time. So it's a good thing to do. For me, I like to do it because when I'm writing, um, uh, I don't want to think about, gee, I wonder what's going to happen next, or gee, I wonder what's going to happen in 3 chapters, or gee, I wonder how the story is going to end. I don't want to think about any of that stuff. I just want to know. I want to know exactly where the story is going, so I can just focus on the writing and the scene and the dialogue and the characters and the prose and all that kind of stuff. There's enough to worry about when I'm actually writing without having to worry about, you know, what's going to happen, uh, you know, as the story progresses. Because then you just got to go back and rewrite it all anyway. So there's no point in doing it that way. But I know people like to do it. Stephen King, I know, does likes to do it that way. I know other writers like to do it that way. I always personally feel when I read a book, there are many times I will read a book and I'll be like, this writer doesn't know where they're going with this story, and it's obvious to me. And that's always like a bit of a drag, because I think it's just people don't want to do the work up front, in my opinion, humble opinion. They just want to write the idea, and it's I think it sometimes hurts the book.
It probably allows you to open up those ideas more if you know where it's going, right? Because you don't have that unknown in your head. Like, we're going to get to that point eventually. So let's take something and, we can really open it up.
Yeah, I mean, there's many benefits to it. One is that you can tease things if you know where you're going with the story. It's fun to kind of like tease those moments early on, uh, or tease those end results early on, through, even if it's just through like the way character acts or maybe something they say or whatever. And then the other thing is, to your point, yeah, you can. This is not to say that things don't change as you go through the writing process. Um, many times I've been writing and um, following my outline, and I'll get to a point where the characters have developed differently than I anticipated, or I have an idea that maybe I thought of that is different and maybe better than what I had in the outline, and it changes the direction of the story slightly. So when those things happen, and they definitely happen, and I allow them to happen, and I'm always exciting when they happen. Um, then I just go back to my outline and I modify that for the rest of the way, so that I'm like, okay, well, we're going a little bit different direction here in chapter 28-7 or whatever. So I'm gonna make some tweaks to the next 20-30 chapters just so that it lines up. Um, yeah, so I don't restrict myself to, I have to stick by the outline no matter what. But again, speaking as a professional writer, if you present a pitch to a publisher and you present them an outline and they buy that outline, you've got to stick to that outline. I mean, you've been paid to write what you've pitched them, so you can't like go, oh wait, I'm going to do something completely different. That's not really an option unless you go back to those editors and I guess talk to them. But anyway, so it's like it's more complicated when you start pre-selling stuff. But creatively speaking, I love having. Yeah, I think to your point exactly. I think the outline provides more flexibility and freedom than it would be if I didn't have any, know where I was going whatsoever. I think that would feel much more restricting to me.
So when you're pitching a story to somebody, like you said, and then like an outline, for example, like you said, when somebody goes back at you and says, well, they say things like, we really like your outline, and we'll be interested if you do this, this, and this with it. Do they ever come at you like that, or is it more they accept it for what it is?
Um, I don't. That's more a screenplay thing that would
Okay.
happen. I think, but they have suggestions. Yeah, I think if you are pitching an outline, um, but the suggestions wouldn't necessarily be that specific as much as it would be more thematic or character based. So they might want to see more of one character, or they might want to know more about. Might want a certain character developed more. Um, they might not like, maybe this, I'm making this up. This doesn't happen to me, but they might not like the way one character is written or whatever. So they tend to be more character, at least my limited experience. They don't really tell you what to write as far as like what the story is. Um, they might have suggestions, like I said, where like, whoa, well, what would you think about, you know, instead of A doing B? But I don't. I think editors, for the most part, tend to they don't want to they don't want to interfere too much with the writer's vision for the story. I think if they don't like the story, they won't buy the story. I think if the story that they buy, but again, as a writer, you're open to suggestions. When I have, when I offer the book out, a book to like maybe two or three early readers for feedback, sometimes you get a suggestion or two that you can maybe leave or take. But no, it's not usually that direct. Usually, I'm in charge of the story. Uh, they just might want to see, like I said, more or less of this or that kind of thing, or maybe the pacing isn't quite right, or maybe it gets clunky in certain chapters and they need to be rewritten or sped up or what stuff like that. Um, it's more about the, I guess, the flow of the story versus the story itself.
Okay,
In
cool.
my experience, yeah,
Yeah.
I would not be thrilled if somebody told me to change the plot of my story. That wouldn't be something I would be comfortable with.
Yeah,
I
because then
don't think.
it wouldn't be yours anymore. Right.
Yeah, yeah. That's what you do when you're a work for hire. I did a work for hire story not that long ago, and they kept the company who hired me kept telling me to change the story to make the story different, like to instead of going to you know like add this and ooh add this idea, and they kept throwing like all these things, and I was just like a tool. I was just like a what I mean, I was a monkey just like doing whatever they told me to do. So that's not something I would ever want to do with my own personal, you know, the work that I create
Mhm.
originally. Yeah. And I don't even like doing that, but when you're a writer, you do things for money. So
Okay. Okay. So, if I could, I want to ask you about a book. So don't let them get you down. Um, leading, I hadn't read it because first of all, it's just hard to find. So I had to figure out how to obtain a copy of it. But then I ended up getting one, and the reviews that I watched and read leading up to it, everybody had said that after they read it, it floored them and related to them personally in a different way than the rest of your books. And so I was really intrigued, and I read it. And it's the same thing. I mean, I related to so many aspects of it, and I don't want to give spoilers away of what it is or anything, but I kind of want to roll this into asking you about how you handle criticism. So I'm a music director at a church here on Cape Cod, and we have about 3,200 families in this parish. So there's a lot of people, and we have three masses in the winter, and then in the summer we have eight because we have all these vacation people coming in, and so um, there's just a lot of people, and it's very easy for these people, especially on Cape Cod, because there's a lot of retirees out here, and they have a lot of opinions and this I don't know this attitude about them. I had just moved here like 3 years ago, so I'm still kind of
mhm.
learning my way around here, and they have no problem writing letters or writing comments if they don't like the music they're hearing or if they don't like the psalms or the hymns they're hearing.
Interesting.
Yeah, and when I first took the position,
I never heard about people getting criticized for the way they do church stuff, but that's
yeah. So
interesting. Yeah.
as an example, if you want to hear, last week so I've been at this church for a little over 3 years now, and I got this letter from this woman in New York who only comes in the summer. So I haven't seen her in 4 or 5 months, whatever. She hand typed a letter, signed it, printed out supplemental materials that she thought I would like to read about, and wrote me a letter on how the piano in a church is very offensive to her religion and her way of going to mass on the weekend. And
Uh-huh.
but then she said things like, your playing is sometimes offensive, which makes
Uh-huh.
no sense to me, because I mean the music we play is so quiet and slow, and so um
I
and I
was gonna
read
say,
that letter,
did you break out into some like boogie woogie or something halfway through?
Elton
Halfway
John,
through mass?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But today I get letters like that, and I just laugh at them, at the letters, not the person, because they're entitled to their opinion, and you have to accept that.
Yes and no.
Yeah, yeah. But then it's the six.
Are they paying to be there? If not, they should shut up and just listen. But okay,
Right.
but go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And but then it's, like she printed 6 articles about how the piano is ruining, the music is ruining the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
I'm reading this going, that's not why the Catholic Church is in issues right now.
Yeah.
But that
It's
that's a topic for another thing.
right.
But now I can look at these things and I go, there people are entitled to their opinions, and I move on. But when I first took the job, that was my biggest struggle. And I started having a lot of anxiety because the piano and the organ are right up front, next to the altar, so everybody's looking at you every mass, and that was a big hurdle. And so when I was reading, to finally get to the question, when I was reading "Don't Let Them Get You Down" and his dealing with anxiety, um, it was interesting. It's a different situation that he's in, but it was nice to know. And I don't know if you wrote this from a personal experience, but I wanted to know, like, um, do you write stories like that as a way of therapy? Is it a therapeutic way of getting through something personally? Um, Especially with anxiety. Do you have anxiety when you read criticism online, whether it's positive or negative? And I'm curious what your processes of handling criticism.
Um, well, to answer your question about "Don't Let Them Get You Down," that was written a while back. I think I wrote that book around 2007, 2008, give or take. So yeah, and it was therapeutic. It was cathartic. I would say more than therapeutic. It was cathartic. It was I wanted to write a book about um everyone writes about a lot of not everyone, but there's a lot of books about depression and mental health and anxiety and taking medications for and all that kind of stuff for depression. And people cover that kind of side of it, and sometimes they cover it, and everyone covers it in a different way for the most part. But what I really wanted to write a book about was what um, what happens to a person after they've gone through all of this uh, tragedy and or clinical issues, depression, anxiety, gone through all the therapy, gone through all the medications, gone through it, and then kind of gotten back to a baseline normalcy. And but then the next phase of returning to life as you knew it is you have to reintegrate yourself into sort of society, and there's new tensions and there's new tools that you use to deal with those tensions. And so for "Don't Let Them Get You Down" really starts at that point. It starts where this guy has spent the last couple of years dealing with depression and anxiety and being on medication and being in therapy and all that stuff, and now he's and a tragic loss, and now he's dealing with, like, okay, how do I become part of, like, this world again now that I'm relatively stable? And so that's kind of what I wanted to write. That was the focus of that book. Um so yeah, it was fairly cathartic. And I would say I would definitely say it's my most personal novel. Did everything that happened in that book happen to me? No. Is it autobiographical? No. But it deals with themes that I'm very had a lot of experience with and stuff like that. As it pertains to the criticism, I don't mind. I used to early on when I was a new writer just starting out. It was very hard for me to receive criticism because I wasn't used to your point, like you said when you first started. I wasn't used to it, and I was very excited that I was being published, and I was very excited that people were reading my work, and then to have people criticize that work is, you take it very personally, and it was very hurtful because in a way they're kind of killing killing your buzz in a way, and also they're making you feel bad about what you created, and so it's not a great feeling. um Obviously you have to develop a thick skin, because you will get a lot of criticism throughout your career. It doesn't ever stop, and so you have to basically ignore it, to your point, or laugh about it or whatever. I don't really read, like, I don't go to Goodreads anymore, for example, because I just there's no point. You go if you want to. So I used to do it. I used to read more reviews, um, because I wanted the feedback. I wanted to know what people liked or didn't like. I wanted to hear kind of. I kind of, in my mind, it was sort of like a way to receive constructive criticism. But then what happens is, a lot of times people write that are reviews that aren't really reviews of the work. They're more, um, it's more like hate mail. It's more like they attack you. They call you names. They infer that they infer what kind of person you are or what kind of beliefs you have based on these characters that you create. So they're very, it's very personal hate, like, attacks. So that's why I don't do read Goodreads anymore. I don't really read Amazon reviews at all. I do check I like to see how the books are doing. I like to see how the ratings are or whatever. So I know whether they've been well received or not. But I don't really read the actual reviews because, yeah, because a lot of times they're very obviously there's a lot of very positive reviews, which is always nice to hear. But it doesn't really, it doesn't really, it's not, it doesn't really. It's nice to hear, but it doesn't really affect how I would write something else versus, you know, constructive criticism. You might be like, oh, well, maybe I should for the next one. Maybe I won't. I'll lean off on this one subject, or I'll write that differently based on the response from this other thing. Um, but like I said, it's the point now where I just try not to. I just ignore it all because like I said, there's so many people two things. One is they come in very, they come back very personal attacks. Their favorite thing of reviewers is to infer, like I said, what kind of person I am because of the characters that I write. And they say things about me that are horrible and not true. And then and the other thing is, these days, especially, people come in or people write reviews with a preset agenda in mind. So they're coming in hot. They're coming in with like a, this is my soapbox to talk about something I believe strongly in or think is important to me, and so I'm going to utilize this person's creativity to make my point about something completely different. So for all those reasons, I tend to stay away from reviews, because it doesn't help, and it doesn't, just makes you feel crappy, and it's hard enough to write and to create original content, and try and make it as good as possible, and you want to entertain people and you want people to be happy. That's the whole reason I do what I do. So there's really no point in reading the hate mail and stuff like that. So yeah, so my philosophy is I don't really pay attention to it anymore.
Cool. So it's
If somebody wrote me a letter like that, I
yeah.
don't know. I would just probably burn it and move on. But it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a not a
my
great
wife,
feeling.
my wife said I should scan it and put it on the parish Facebook page for everybody to see, and then see what happens. It's like, no, of course I would never do that. But
No, you don't want to do that.
no,
It's like one of those things where it's like you don't want to ever engage because no matter how polite you are or how like if you were to write this woman back the nicest letter in the world, it wouldn't do any good because she
no,
obviously has her wacko perspective, and you're not gonna change that.
right. So when you mentioned, all these people like your fans, like when you're on a Zoom call, like a book club call, and you're seeing 30 people sitting in front of you, and they all say, I'm from Nebraska, all over the place. What does that do to you? Is that a feeling of like, are you proud? Is that exciting that you see that you've stretched across the country like this and you have fans all over the place? Like, what does that do for you mentally? Is it a sense of pride when you see that? Like, this is
Yeah,
working?
yeah, for sure. I mean, it'd be crazy not to feel that way. I think any time anybody buys and reads something I wrote, I feel that way. Um, whether they're, the fact that there's more people reading it, um, obviously is great and feels good and stuff like that. And that's the whole point is you are, when you're writing a book, the whole point is that you want people to read it and you want people to, feel good about it and enjoy it and have fun and be happy, bring some happiness to their lives. Um, so yeah, so it's definitely a good feeling. I saw a lot of, I send a lot of books internationally, now, um, and that's really cool. Like, it's fun to have fans in, Germany and Japan and, Australia and all that kind of stuff. That seems really kind of crazy to me. And that's a cool feeling for sure. So yeah, I think,
I think it's
it's
interesting
definitely,
when, like, in the
yeah.
Gothic one, for example, like I was in the Gothic, and you see people from all sorts of situations. Like, somebody had their kid on their lap when they were watching you, and that shows you how much art is so universal, and that, you know you're writing in your head, you're doing a story, or an idea that's so what you're thinking, but to somebody else, and you don't even know who it's going to reach. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, that's what, like I said, that's why I do it. I want people to find those stories and like the stories and all that stuff. And yeah, it's always surprising a little bit surprising the range of people who buy, for example, buy my books and who respond to them and even like based on nothing but like Facebook friend requests that I get, or messages
Okay.
to my website. I get such a wide range of people and backgrounds and all that stuff. So, but it's one of those things where people all have their own artistic, subjective, preferences, and people who like, certain kinds of horror or certain kinds of genre fiction, yeah, we'll find your stuff hopefully if it gets out there widely enough and people talk about it. So yeah, it's obviously a cool feeling. Um, I'm kind of one of those guys that's always, I don't really get too high or too low. I believe very much in the work, and so yeah. So it's just kind of one of those things where it feels good for sure, and I just want to keep building on that and keep building that sense of community with my readers and just trying to get. But I'm really focused on, oh, cool, I have all these new readers. I really want to make this next book even better because more people are reading it now. So I really focus on the work itself, and telling a great story as best I can.
Awesome. All right, so I just have one more thing to talk to you about, and then I'll let you go.
Yeah, good.
So that you're going to go on a book tour, and you currently have a Kickstarter campaign that you're doing, and I'm going to link it in this video so people can
Well, thank you.
access it. And I was able to snag the Holy Bible version of Boys. So I'm
Oh,
excited
nice.
about that. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, you can bring it to your church, and no one will know.
Yeah, I'll just put it on the shelf and see if anybody grabs
No
it.
one will know that you're reading Boys in the Valley.
One time there was the World Series. I'm a Yankees fan living in Massachusetts. It's a mess. But one time they were in the World Series, and I had the iPad on the piano, watching the World Series on mute during mass because the piano was turned.
Oh,
And I had forgotten that the
that's
live
funny.
stream camera was on. And of course, on the live stream camera, you see the back and you just see the game on. And it was,
Oh no. Did you get
yeah.
in trouble?
Well, luckily I have control of the camera from where I am. So
Oh, nice.
I blocked that out instantly. But it's
I'm sure you weren't the only person watching the World Series game at church that day.
no, no. And you see people with their cell phones in mass,
Yeah.
God knows what they're doing. Well, he does know what they're doing in church, I guess. But so when you're promoting your stories, social media is such a big thing now, right? So is it difficult for you to stay like on top of a feed, so to speak, of promoting a novel, or do you hone in on specific audiences like the Facebook group that you have, or
Mhm.
your newsletter or things like that?
Um, yeah, I sort of have like a way of doing things. I mean, it's been trickier to stay on top of it all recently because really, you know, because I've had too many releases, frankly. So I just had, and you don't ever want to be that guy that's like flooding your stream with buy my book,
Mhm.
but the reality is you owe it to the publisher, and you owe it to the, in my mind, the book, to you want it to get it out, to get it out there and get word out there. I think what's happened with me these last like 6 months or whatever was I had Don't Let Them Get You Down, Child Alone with Strangers, Gothic, Boy with the Blue Rose Heart, all kind of came out within like a 4 month period. Um, and so I was trying to promote everything. And then I was also beginning promotion for Boys in the Valley. Um, so it just got really cluttered, and I just had too much um, going on, and I felt badly that I was, having to promote all these different books, but I at kind of all at the same time. But the reality was, it just happened that way. It wasn't anything that I'd planned. I don't, as a writer, you don't really have much control over when stuff comes out. You only have control over when you deliver it, and schedules change, like um uh like Boy the Blue Rose Heart was supposed to come out like February of last year, ended up not coming out till November. Um The Child Alone with Strangers was supposed to come out originally in August, and it ended up not coming out until late October. So it started bumping into all these, and then Gothic, coming out in February. So it's so that was an extreme kind of period of time. Now I'm really just focusing in on, trying to always plug all my books here and there, just to kind of keep them in the conversation, or keep people aware of them, or make sure they're aware that they know they exist. But right now I'm really focused on just promoting Boys in the Valley. So I'm really just down, really putting all my energy into that. But as far as focusing on social media and newsletter stuff is concerned, yeah, I mean, I try and post not too egregiously. I think I try and do like once or twice a week, um, or if something happens with the book, if I get a great review or somebody blurbs it, a big writer blurbs it or whatever, I'll share that because I'm excited about it or whatever. Um, but yeah, no, I kind of just stick to I started kind of doing the TikTok thing. That's had mixed results, I would say. Um, well, the thing with the TikTok thing is it's a kind of like a newsletter in a way. It's in the sense that it's not like Facebook. It's not like Facebook or Twitter where you're like, oh, I'm just gonna like kind of post something cool that I just happen, like, oh, Nick Carter just blurbed my book. I'm gonna post his blurb because I'm so excited about it, and people would want to see that, I think. And but with TikTok, it's like, I gotta like make a video, so it's like, why don't I don't really want to make a video about, I mean, this wasn't important enough, kind of a big enough thing to make a video out of. So it's like, it seems like few and far betweens when the TikTok thing makes sense. So I don't know about the TikTok, but I do like being on there. I just don't have enough to talk about. And nobody
You
wants
could
to
always
see
you could
me
always
talking.
you could always write some interpretive dance and do some clips of that.
Yeah, and I'm not like the most photogenic guy, so I just don't. I don't know. I just the whole thing is like a revolt, but whatever. And then, but I do like the Instagram. And I like Facebook, and I like Twitter. I love interacting with um readers. That's my favorite part of what I do. So the Facebook Freaks group is so much fun for me, and I think that's the nicest thing about being on social media is readers can reach out, they can message me or whatever, and we can have a quick chat, or they can whatever talk to me via social media postings, and then also it's also fun because I get to meet like booksellers. Like I've met so many great booksellers across the country via my Twitter. So it's been fun to meet like all these and podcasters and book so people that are like quote unquote on the I guess the PR promotional side of things or the sales side of things or the business side of things, whatever you want to call it, but a professional side of things maybe. But also it's fun to meet with these people because they're cool folks to get to know and you learn about more of what they're doing and so like that the tour, for example, most of those bookstores are bookstores that I have interacted with on like Twitter or Facebook. And then I was like, hey, I'm doing a tour, would love to stop by. And they're like, yeah, that's great. So I really enjoy um, social media. And I try not, I don't really worry too much about, I don't strategize all that much. Um, I just kind of like post things as they come to me, or if I find something is interesting or fun, I'll post it. But I don't really think about it all that much other than that. Um, I don't have like a calendar of like, when I post up or whatever. It's just kind of random. Sometimes it's a cat, you know, sometimes I post about my cats. Sometimes I'm posting because the Lions won a game finally. Who knows? But for the most part, it's yeah, I like to post my work because I mean, honestly, one guy said on Instagram the other day, he said I posted about one of my books or something, and he said, "Man, you really got to stop. You really got to post something other than books." And I was like, "It's literally all I do. Like
You do. Yeah.
I'm either reading a book or writing a book or selling a book. Um, I promote other authors. Obviously, I promote other books, but I don't really do much else. I'm pretty much writing, reading, sleeping, and video games are sort of the four things I do with my life. So, which is a sad thing to say, but it's just the way. So I don't have like a lot of like other. I'm not running marathons. I'm not riding horses. I'm not skydiving. Um, I don't even go out to eat really. However, I don't go to social events very often. So I just don't really have that much else to talk about. So sometimes it can be a little, I think for some people, a little redundant. But yeah. But I like I'm a book guy. I love books. I love reading them as much as I enjoy writing them and learning. I love collecting them. I'm a huge collector. Uh, so all that stuff's really fun for me. So that's usually what I talk about on social media.
Awesome. Well, I thank you for being part of this. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Thank you.